My name is Liam Carter, and for a long time I believed my wife was always angry with me. When people think about marriage, they often imagine love, laughter, and peaceful evenings together. But sometimes marriage is not like that. Sometimes it becomes quiet, heavy, and filled with misunderstandings. Sophia and I had been married for 4 years. In the beginning, everything between us felt perfect. We met at a small bookstore in Chicago. I still remember the first time I saw her. She was standing near the window, reading a novel, and sunlight was falling softly on her face. I gathered the courage to speak to her. "Is that book good?" I asked. She looked up and smiled. "Yes, but I think life stories are always more interesting than books." That simple conversation was the beginning of our story. A year later, we got married. Our life was simple but beautiful. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had something more important: hope and dreams. We would cook dinner together after work. Sometimes we watched movies. Sometimes we just talked about our future. Sophia always wanted a warm home filled with laughter. But slowly things started to change. At first it was small things. Sophia began coming home later than usual. Sometimes she looked tired, and sometimes she seemed distracted. "Everything okay?" I asked one evening. "Yes," she said quickly. "Just work." I trusted her, so I didn't ask more questions. But weeks passed, and the distance between us began to grow. Sophia became quieter. She was easily irritated, and sometimes she would become angry over small things. One night, when I forgot to buy milk on my way home, she became unusually upset. "You never listen," she said angrily. Her reaction surprised me. Sophia was not usually like this. After that night, I began noticing her behavior more carefully. She spent more time on her phone. Sometimes she smiled while reading messages. And when I entered the room, she quickly locked the screen. Maybe it was nothing. But doubt is a dangerous thing. Once it enters your mind, it begins to grow. One afternoon, I met my friend Daniel at a cafe. We talked about work, life, and usual things. But before leaving, he said something that made my heart heavy. "Liam, I don't know if I should say this," he said. "What is it?" I asked. "I saw Sophia yesterday," he continued. "That's normal," I replied. "She lives in this city." Daniel hesitated. She wasn't alone. My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "She was sitting with another man at a cafe." I tried to laugh. "Probably a coworker." Daniel shrugged. "Maybe." But the seed of doubt had already been planted. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every strange moment from the past few weeks. Sophia coming home late. Sophia hiding her phone. Sophia getting angry over small things. Was I imagining things, or was something really wrong?
The next morning, Sophia looked tired but calm. "I have a busy week," she told me. "Many meetings." I nodded, pretending everything was normal. But inside, my thoughts were racing. Instead of talking to her honestly, I made a terrible decision. I decided to test her. I wrote a letter. In that letter, I told Sophia that my company was sending me to another city for 3 days. It wasn't true. I simply wanted to see what she would do if she believed I was gone. When I gave her the letter that morning, she looked surprised. "You have to travel?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. She hugged me tightly. "Take care," she said softly. Her voice sounded sincere. For a moment, I almost told her the truth about my doubts, but fear stopped me. Instead of leaving the city, I stayed at a small hotel nearby. Those 3 days felt longer than 3 years. I kept thinking about what Sophia might be doing. Was she meeting someone? Was my marriage already broken? On the 3rd evening, I decided to return home earlier than expected. My heart was beating fast as I walked toward our house. The street was quiet. The lights inside our home were on. I opened the door slowly, but what I saw inside shocked me completely. The living room was decorated with soft golden lights. There were flowers on the table and photographs on the walls. Photos of Sophia and me, our wedding day, our first trip together, our happiest memories. In the center of the room stood Sophia. She was holding a small box in her hands. When she saw me, her eyes widened with surprise. "Liam, you're back already?" I looked around the room in confusion. "What is all this?" Sophia slowly smiled. "I was preparing a surprise for you." A surprise? Yes, she said. Tomorrow is our anniversary. Suddenly everything started to make sense. The late nights, the meetings, I said quietly. Sophia nodded. I've been meeting a designer and planning the celebration. I wanted it to be perfect. I felt my chest tighten with shame. The man Daniel saw at the cafe, the secret messages, the late nights, they were all part of the surprise she was planning for me. Sophia walked closer and looked into my eyes. But why are you back early? She asked. I hesitated. For a moment I considered hiding the truth, but I realized something important. If I wanted our marriage to survive, I had to be honest. I never left the city, I admitted. Sophia looked confused. What do you mean? I stayed here because I thought... My voice broke. You thought what? I thought you were meeting someone else. The room became silent. Sophia didn't say anything for several seconds. Then she sighed deeply. You didn't trust me, she said softly. Her voice was not angry. It was hurt. That hurt felt worse than anger. I'm sorry, I said quietly. I should have talked to you instead of making assumptions. Sophia looked around the decorated room. I worked so hard to make this night special, she said, and I nearly destroyed it because of my doubts. She looked back at me. Liam, trust is the most important thing in a relationship. I nodded. I know that now. Slowly, Sophia's expression softened. She stepped closer and held my hand. We all make mistakes, she said, but we must learn from them. That night, we sat together in the decorated living room and talked. Honestly, for the first time in weeks, we talked about our fears, our expectations, and the importance of communication. I realized something that night. Sometimes anger is not really anger. Sometimes it is stress. Sometimes it is exhaustion. And sometimes it is simply the pain of feeling misunderstood. Sophia wasn't an angry wife. She was a woman who had been working hard to create a beautiful moment for us. And I almost ruined it because I was afraid to ask simple questions. Before going to bed, Sophia opened the small box she had been holding earlier. Inside was a silver watch. For you, she said. A reminder that time is precious, and we shouldn't waste it on doubts. I smiled. And I have a promise for you, I said. What promise? From now on, I will always choose conversation over suspicion. Sophia smiled warmly, and in that moment I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Because I finally understood the truth. Love does not survive on guesses. Love survives on trust, and sometimes the strongest marriages are not the ones without problems. They are the ones where two people choose to understand each other again and again. For the first time in many weeks, our home felt warm again. The next morning, sunlight slowly filled our living room. The flowers Sophia had placed on the table still smelled fresh, and the golden lights from the night before were still hanging softly around the walls. Sophia was in the kitchen making coffee. I watched her quietly for a moment. It felt strange how easily doubts had entered my mind before. Just a few days earlier, I was convinced that something terrible was happening in my marriage. Now, standing there in the quiet morning light, everything looked different. Sophia turned and noticed me watching her. Good morning, she said with a gentle smile. Good morning, I replied. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. But this silence was not heavy like before. It was calm. Sophia placed 2 cups of coffee on the table and sat down. Last night was emotional, she said softly. I nodded. Yes, but I think we needed it. She looked at me carefully. Liam, she continued, I want to ask you something honestly. Of course. When did you start doubting me? Her question was simple, but it made me think deeply. I think it started when things began to change, I admitted. When you started coming home late. When you seemed tired and distant. Sophia sighed. I wish I had told you earlier about the anniversary surprise, she said. I wish I had trusted you more, I replied. For a moment, we both smiled sadly. It was strange how 2 people could love each other and still misunderstand each other so easily. That day, we decided to spend our anniversary in a very simple way. No big party, no expensive restaurant, just the 2 of us. In the evening, we went for a walk near the lake where we used to go when we were first dating. The wind was cool, and the city lights reflected softly on the water. This place hasn't changed, Sophia said. But we have, I replied. She laughed softly. That's true. We walked slowly along the path, remembering old moments from the beginning of our relationship. The first time we met, our first trip together, our wedding day, it reminded me of something important. Marriage is not only about love. It is also about patience, understanding, and sometimes forgiveness. After our walk, we sat on a bench facing the lake. Sophia leaned her head on my shoulder. You know, she said quietly, when you told me you didn't trust me, it hurt. I know, I said, but I also realized something, she continued. What? That maybe we both stopped talking as much as we used to. She was right. In the beginning of our relationship, we shared everything. Every thought, every small story from our day. But over time, life became busy. Work, responsibilities, stress. Slowly, without noticing, our conversations became shorter. Our silence became longer, and that silence allowed doubts to grow. I promised something too, Sophia said. What is it? I will never hide things from you, even if they are surprises. I smiled. That sounds fair. The wind moved gently across the lake, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely relaxed. When we returned home later that night, Sophia looked at the decorations still hanging in the living room. Maybe we should leave them for a few more days, she said. Why? I asked. So we remember this moment. I nodded. Remember what? That even when things feel broken, they can still be repaired. Over the next few weeks, something in our marriage slowly changed. Not in a dramatic way, but in small, meaningful ways. We started eating dinner together again without our phones. We asked each other about our day. Sometimes we even returned to the small bookstore where we first met. One evening, while standing near the same window where I first saw Sophia years ago, she looked at me and smiled. Do you remember what you asked me the first time we met? She said. Yes, I laughed. I asked if the book was good. And do you remember what I said? She asked. Yes, I replied. You said life stories are more interesting than books. Sophia nodded. And now we have our own story. I looked at her and realized how true that was. Our story wasn't perfect. It had doubts, mistakes, misunderstandings, but it also had something stronger. Two people willing to learn, forgive, and keep choosing each other. And maybe that is what real love actually looks like. Not perfect, but patient. Not easy, but worth it. Because in the end, marriage is not about never making mistakes. It is about choosing the same person again, even after the mistakes. And that night, standing in the quiet bookstore with Sophia beside me, I knew one thing with certainty. My wife was never an angry wife. She was simply the woman who loved me enough to stay and give our story another chapter.